My title is Observations on the Technique and Art of the Slow Exegesis, on the example of the Octomodal Doxastikon of the Dormition of the Most Holy Theotokos, Thearchio Neumati. In fact, Putna, the Holy Monastery of Putna has one of its main feasts on the Dormition of the Most Holy Theotokos. And you can see those famous altar curtains, Dvera, in Slavonic and also in Romanian, which have been donated by the Voivode Bogdan to the monastery 1 year before the autograph of Extatio Putnei, which is with his famous Anthologion. So it seems that the feast of the Dormition of the Most Holy Theotokos from the beginning was one of the most important feasts in the calendar of this holy monastery. And we wonder what they were singing at that feast. By looking in some of the editions for the Putna school, we could see that there is the Apologition of the feast of the Dormition of the Most Holy Theotokos by Evstatie in his autograph from Moscow, 1350 in Slavonic language. And then we have two colophonic pieces. We have Alo Parthene Achrande and Charitomeni Parthene, which occurs in many of the Putnian manuscripts. You can see here, both of them are compositions by St. John Cocuzélis, and both of them are provisions for matins. If comparing this selection of the colophonic compositions with what we find in the Greek Mathematarion, transcribed into the new method by Hourmuzios, the Arhivarul, we see that in fact there are quite many pieces for this feast. You can see here more than 12 pieces for this great feast with compositions by St. John Cocuzélis, by Constantinos Magoulas, by Manuel Christafis, Michail Patsas, Xenos Koronis, and also some very interesting pieces called Paleon. It's not Paleon in the old style of the non-colophonic sticheron, but it's sort of proto-colophonic pieces. It's very, very interesting. And then we have also 3 megalinaria. So from this colophonic wealth, we can see that 2 of the pieces, this number 608 and number 612, found their way into the Moldavian Anthologia manuscripts of the Putna monastery. There doesn't exist, as far as I know, I could not trace it, any colophonic version of the famous Doxastikon in the 8 modes, Thearchio Neumati, which is Ogonaceali Manovenim, in Romanian it's Cu voia cea dumnezeiește stăpânitoare. It seems that for a long time they were singing it according to the old style and not in a colophonic manner. You saw that many of the pieces, by doing a rough study in the contents of the Anthologia from Putna manuscript, we could see that about 2/3 of the colophonic pieces are attributed to St. John Cocuzélis. So he was very beloved in Moldavia as the greatest colophonic composer. St. John Cocuzélis did also a revision of the old Sticherarion, and here is our piece, Thearchio Neumati. It's attributed to Ioannou Monachou. You can see here Ioannis Monachos, which is St. John of Damascus. He is the initial composer of this piece, and it's very beautiful because St. John of Damascus was also the first systematizer of the 8 modes. So it seems that this piece was a very important one, and we propose that it's most probably they were singing it in old times also at Putna monastery. But how would it sound alike? Here you can see the Ambrosianum manuscript from the 14th century, edited in the Monumenta Muce Byzantina series. And here the ascription says, to the Maschino. So I wanted just to propose you that we have a look at this. We work with this piece with with our paleography study group. Ms. Vienia is also part of this study group, so I would like to invite her to join in when she feels so. And we are preparing it for a congress in August. But I wanted also to show it to you because it's highly, highly interesting, and I think it can reinforce what we saw all the time, that those old pieces really cannot be sung just at first sight, only with their metrophonical structure, but they need some exegesis. In his book about the intonation formulas and signatures of Byzantine chant, Johann Rosted published also the beginning of this sticheron in the form of a didactic piece in order to learn metrophony and parallagi. Sticheron metrophonomenon και παραλλαγιζόμενον isofelian μαθητού. So this is a sticheron which goes together with metrophonia and parallagi for the sake of the student, of the pupil. And it's from the codex, the famous Sticherarium Peribleptus, which today is kept at Cardiff University in Wales, in Great Britain. He just shows the beginning and the end. So this was very interesting for me, and it was stirring the curiosity. So we got the manuscript. Here you can see again at the end. Here you can see a copy. And it's at the end, this manuscript is in 2 volumes, and at the end of the 2nd volume, you can find Thearchio Neumati in the form of a didactic method. And let's have a closer look at this, because I think that we can find many clues about the very concept of exegesis here when studying carefully the whole process of education they had in earlier times, going through metrophonia and then parallagi and then melos. Today we have only parallagi and melos, and between parallagi and melos there is very small difference. However, in older times it seems that it was really a sort of not a gap, but there was really a big difference. So parallagi was the point which made a bridge between what was written down in a stenographic way and what had to be sung at the end. Here is also the beginning of the slow exegesis. So we call this slow exegesis by Hourmuzios. According to Apostolos Konstas Hios, the exegesis of the old Sticherarion is called melos organikon. He says the melos can be of 4 different natures. It can be tachis or hima, and then it can be irmologikon, melos, like in the slow katavasi, and then it can be organikon, like this one with the slow exegesis of the old Sticherarion, and then it can be argon melos, like in the Papadiki. He has these 4 categories. And in musicology today, now we used to call this a slow exegesis. So we are going to concentrate now together a bit on the beginning of this famous piece, which goes through the modes in the old manner, having the modes as pairs. The first, and then the plagal of the first, the second, and then the plagal of the second, and so on. This is the oldest form of having octoechical material. Later on, they will put first the authentic modes, first, second, third, and fourth, and then all the plagals. But this is the oldest way. And it has to do also with the will of St. John Cucuzelis. So here it is. And I would like just to invite you that we study together. Please feel free to sing together with me, to see what the manuscript writes here down and what is then the exercise they did in between the metrophonical structure and the melos. And then we will sing together the melos. We can see it also in a transcription into staff notation, and we can again observe the meters there and the duration of the syllables. So we start in the first mode. I have here the canonati. Of course, you can sing an octave lower, maybe if it's too high. And then we are going to stir it. We will do that rhythmical reading according to Arvanitis. And Arvanitis is one of the important researchers which investigated the binary structure of the old repertory. It's also Ewald Jammers and Jan van Biesen, it's Irina and Marina Shkolnik, it's Simon Karas. They did, all of those people did a lot of investigation about the meter of the old repertory, mainly Sticheraria and Irmologia. And all of them found out that it's the base is a binary structure. So we can do this. And we can see that for a sense of a metrical structure now, in the ancient sense of the word, we have a brief syllable and another brief, and another one, and another one. And then here at the end, we have 3 long syllables, which are indicated by the formula diu, and then dipli, and again dipli. So these syllables will count 2 beats, whereas the other ones 1 beat. So this is a sort of very basic rhythmical structure, which surely is correct. This is, it makes sense, but it's not the last word of the piece. Here we can look closer at this exercise from the Peribleptus Codex. Firstly, we can see stichiron, metrophonomenon και παραλλαγιζόμενον is Ophelian Mathitou, as we read it before. Ichos protos, and then it begins with the parallagi already from the first intonation formula. So if we read it with the basic tones, it goes like and then if we activate the small signatures which are below of each sound, then we arrive to this. And then it goes along here. We can read this with a text. And of course, for the first phrase, it's identical with what is written in the old Sticheraria, but below you will see that there are no gaps, there are no leaps. Everything goes smoothly, stepwise, ascending or descending, because below of each neum, except the ison, we will have the indication of the mode to which it corresponds. So here we have Ananes, Anes, Anes, Nana, Ananes. And then we have the Isa, which are without any sign below, and then we go on and so on. We will look in detail a bit later. So one could wonder why this so complicated solmization, why this so complicated, so special solmization, if the result should have been just and we would have a parallagi which would be by far higher complicated than the final result of the piece, and it would be a bit nonsensical. And the clue is, of course, the oral tradition. The oral tradition has preserved us these very, very beautiful slow melodies, for Thearchio Neumati. And it might be a very old tradition. It might be a very old tradition. Of course, everybody now in musicology is asking whether this should be the only possible solution, or whether there could have existed also a shorter rendition, maybe completely orally transmitted and never truly written down. This is something which also Simon Caras was asking a lot, and he proposed also some shorter versions of exegesis. But I think that a safe way in approaching the entire theme of the exegesis and of the very smooth and very refined interplay of the modes and the modulations, can find a very solid answer in this slow exegesis written down by Hourmuzios. It's really impressive. Hourmuzios wrote down around 30,000 pages of exegesis. I read in the introduction of some of the old Canonica. He was writing really day and night, and at the end of his life, he was alone and he was very poor. But he still was doing these transcriptions because he knew, he had this historical conscience that if you do a reform and you don't leave behind you a bridge like this exegesis, then you can do a great damage to a tradition which is so heavily endeavored to orality as the psaltic chant, the psaltic art. So he, and these, if you see his manuscripts, it's almost perfect without very few corrections. It's very clear that this cannot be done without divine inspiration. It's impossible to explain it. And they are so intricate, it's so complicated. We began with a paleography group to look at also at the exegesis of colophonic pieces by St. John Cucuzelis and some other composers of the colophonic area, and it's really, it's tremendous music. It's so beautiful and it's so subtle. It's impossible. It's a great art of exegesis, and of course it has also some technique therein. And I think Father Avram is just trying to find out this very technique which is in back of it with this tetrametrical structure, basic structures. It's a technique, but it's also a very high art, which has been transmitted from generation to generation. So let's have a brief look at some musicological approaches to this. Here you can see the beginning, Thearchio Neumati, of this piece. And here it goes according to the melody, the short melody of Peter Peloponnesios. Thearchio Neumati. This is what we used to sing today. And this is what we call short exegesis. This is short exegesis for the sticheraric melodies, where each syllable lasts 2 beats, or in the cadential zone it can be also 4. But this is what we are used to call a brief exegesis, a short exegesis for the sticheraric melodies. And then here, going back, we have Iakovos, and then here we have Chrysaphis, the new, and then here we have the old style. And we will focus just on the old style because this is the one which is relevant also, we think, for Putna Monastery. So here you can see the Middle Byzantine notation, and here you can see what we can find also in the Peribleptus manuscript, or something similar with Metrophonia and Parallagi. And here is the Parallagi written down analytically, and here is the Melos. And you can see how this Parallagi really prepares the chanter for the slow exegesis. Here you can see also the total duration of the syllables. It's 2 beats, and then it's 8 and 8 and 8, and then 14 and 16, but everything multiples of 2. And it goes like that. I did an investigation some years ago about Christeo Theos Simonas Ticheron by Leo the Wise. and counted the syllables which have the duration of 8 beats, and it was more than 50%. So this is the most characteristic, and it was observed by Arvanitis firstly, that usually in this style of in this type of exegesis, this melos organikon, each syllable tends to have this duration of 8 beats. It's 2 meters of or 4 bars or 4 beats. And it goes like that also further on. Here we can see it more clearly. If you want, let's sing it a bit together. So here again we have the old manuscript. And let's be very careful what steps they did in order to arrive to a slow melody, which might have been this or something similar. So we have the old notation. It's here transnotated, and then we have it as an exercise of metrophonia and parallagi, where below each neum appear these martyrie, these signatures of the modes, which are of plagal modes when the melody goes down, and of authentic modes when we go up. So we have if we go this neaye, what we sing, is the explanation of this signature. This signature is an abbreviation of this small ihima, or intonation formula. And then and let's have a look also at the slow melody and compare it with the notes of the parallagi. So, is there any connection between the parallagi and the melody? If we pay attention, we can see, for instance, here in me, that it's truly around ananes, and then this is nanes, and so on. There is a very, very strong connection. Some other research has been conducted also to a larger scale to demonstrate this very tight connection between what was the old parallagi, the old solmization, like a preparation for giving then the old melos. It's highly, highly interesting, and we could go on to see more in detail also the other elements. So here we have it also phrase by phrase. I would just propose that we sing the beginning, because I'm worried. I think we ran out of time. Just the beginning, and we try to see them comparatively, because I think there is here some key in order to understand also better the manuscripts of the Putna monastery and all those beautiful chants included there, and the whole phenomenon of exegesis, because it's not only old notation and exegesis. In between is this point of the parallagi, which prepares the soil from a modal point of view. So let's try them again. And then here we have and let's try to sing it here. You see here we will have the phenomenon of the trochos. Well, one has to say that this rising of the voice here goes back to a version of the old Thearchio, which is maybe like this in a Cutulmusian manuscript, which goes high to the low B. Here you can see. So we don't know yet which was the Vorlage, which was the manuscript from which Hourmuzios did his exegesis of the old Thearchio, but maybe if one day, with God's help, if this will be found, then it will be really a very, very important finding in order to have a better key to understand how the slow exegesis for the old style works. And we could go for hours like that and studying it carefully. It's very, very interesting when it comes to the second mode and the other modes, but this will be presented, God willing, at another conference. It's just, I wanted just to mention that although the exegesis for the second and the plague of the second mode is in a chromatic manner, the parallagi at that point was done also according to the diatonic genre. So it has a much stronger position than today. I think that the study in depth of the received tradition of the psaltic art with focus on the art of exegesis on its different levels can provide us with a key also for the Putna manuscript. And maybe this may last many years or entire lives, but it's worthwhile because the slow exegesis really needs very, very patient comparative work, ideally, as Professor Thomas Apostolopoulos suggested, every day, daily, with exercises of source collation. And to put the old manuscript and the new manuscript and carefully observing what happens there. And at the first stage, to leave things to speak from alone, not putting some theories of ourselves on the top of those, but just observe what happens there. So in this way, I think we can disclose the secrets, not only of slow exegesis, but also of the very subtle movement of the modes, and apply it afterwards to not yet interpreted pieces authored by the Romanian and other composers of the Putna school. So I think that this is the way to be humble enough to say, okay, I want to study for some years in depth how Hourmuzios did it, because Hourmuzios was much closer to the tradition than all of we are. And he was surely divinely inspired to do all those slow exegesis, to really to do everyday exercise and to see how it works, and then carefully to put it also to the others. And I think this will be then also the best argument for finding the improvement of this theory, which Father Abraham showed us with the 4-beat meters and so on, which of course is suggested already by Chrysanthos and so on. But I think the way, as great teachers here, starting from Chrysanthos and to Xanthos and many others, suggest we have really to go to school to this slow exegesis and also other forms of exegesis in order to understand better what happens. So thank you so much. I'm ready now. I'm sorry for being a bit running out of time.
First, we want to thank you very much for this master class of singing and also theoretical informations. You said that I said, I just want to come back to a little issue from before. I said that the Papadic exegesis in case of Hourmuzios was short exegesis, which is not at all. I really didn't say this.
Okay, then it was my misunderstanding. I'm sorry.
But in Kievan notation, they are shorter, as you could see in the examples, a little shorter. But yeah.
But the total sum in many cases was the same. It was just the same number of beats. May I show you something from an article of Alexander Lingas, which is very enlightening for all this. And we have to keep in mind that at that time, even Western notation was not fully analytic in the sense of scores of Beethoven or Mozart or something like that. It was functioning on another level. So we have to take this into account. We were speaking about this also with Vienia, how these characteristics of the old staff notation. It's not the same staff notation in Beethoven. It's another way of reporting to staff. And there is a beautiful example from, just a moment, please allow me to find it, from an article about notation politics by Alexander Lingas. Really it just hits the point. Because it might be the case that in Kievan notation, can you see my screen now? It's some other thing about hieronymy here. Just a moment, please. Just have to go a bit back. Here you can see that's those types of exegesis. So it's tachis, irmologikos, organikos, and melosargon, argi exegesis. So this type where one syllable has the duration of 8 beats, it's argi exegesis. And then, just a moment, please. Look here. This is from the article by Alexander Lingas, and here you can see how Corelli writes one of his sonatas. And of course, with it seems very, very simple. Only, you see, eighths, it's the smallest subdivision. But you are supposed to play something like that. And all this was conveyed by the oral tradition of ornamentation. And it might be that in the case of the Kievan old notations, many, many other things happened there. But the basic thing here, look, is that this is 4 beats, and this is also 4 beats. So the basic metrical structure is the same. And here again, Father, we have this 4 structure in the first phrase of this sonata. But we have to be very careful by properly, trying to be aware about habits of staff notation in the 16th and 17th century. We should not suppose that everything is written down, by far not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So then if there is no other comment, then let's make a summary of our beautiful session. Firstly, I would like to congratulate again all the speakers and to thank them for the wonderful things we heard from Evgeny Ignatenko and from Sara Vesnapeno and Shimon Marinchak and from Father Abraham also. And I think that all this fits so fine together, and it's a beautiful way in front of us for fruitful collaboration. This is my most deep wish, that all these scholars can collaborate and help each other, also with Mr. Kyriakos and some other specialists for Greek Byzantine chant, so that we can help also for the repertory of Putna Monastery. And Putna Monastery on its hand can enlighten many, many aspects where we have lots of question marks for the Greek tradition. Mm-hmm. It goes vice versa, it goes on both sides. So if there is no other comment, then let's thank a lot to Father, the Abbot, Father Melchizedek.
Sorry to interrupt you. It's Mr. Adrian Sârbu online, and he wants also to say a few words.
Adrian, Doamne ajută!
Doamne ajută!
Doamne ajută!
Doamne ajută! Should I speak in English or?
Yes, we should, because no, not everybody understands.
First of all, I let me congratulate the organizers and the abbot and catechumenos, the elder Melchizedek, for this very interesting event. I'm so sorry I couldn't take part of it, but my heart and my soul are with you. And second of all, I congratulate you, Professor Alexandru, for this interesting presentation. If it's allowed, I have 2 questions, but I don't know if it's still time. I don't know if the organizers allow me to ask a few things, or
I think so.
so. First question would be about this slower exegesis, which we know that it was a question mark, a very important one for Simon Karas, for Ioannis Alvanitis, and some others researchers. As far as I'm concerned, for the interpreter's point of view, if you take, for instance, Iakovos' thesis, and you try to do what Philantidis tried to do, to compress them, you can notice that there is sort of unsuccessful, let's say, way of compressing those theses. So the idea of getting to a slower exegesis starting from these theses like Iakovos, for instance, is such, it's a case which didn't prove any successful way. So my question is there any, by your experience, is there any composition which has a slower version of exegesis, so that one could extract theses in this slower manner, in order to I don't know how to tell, in order to construct the theory of this slow exegesis, or is just an abstract question mark?
No, I think especially in this, and this is also why I think they were saying Putna. It was the main feast of the monastery, and this is the main feast of the monastery. It should be very solemn. It's in the 8 modes. If you compress it, you will not understand anything about those 8 modes. It's too short. You need that slow manner in order to expose the beauty of the modes. Yeah, I mean in the old sense of the word, and with the sense also of the will of Saint Cuzelis and all this. And for me, the salient point is that it cannot be explained why to have such a complicated parallagi in order to sing short melodies. It would be nonsensical for me. I mean, whereas when looking at parallagi as the bridge between a scenographic writing and then the slow exegesis, makes a lot of sense, because parallagi carefully prepares for each syllable in a way the frame in which that exegesis will move. I see a beautiful beautiful river behind us. It's like, I will put it in Romanian. I will put it in Romanian. Paralagia cea veche este ca și cum ea pregătește sabia în care va curge melosul milenar, multe ori. E o pregătire.
Okay, we don't speak about this argument. It's quite obvious for each one of us, I guess, that there is a slow exegesis. But what I'm trying to ask is about a shorter exegesis. Is there any case of any composition which has at the same time a slow and at the same time a shorter exegesis?
At the same time, well, the only thing which can be argued, which fits in this sense, would be Hermosa Cadavasia, in the sense that many times they fit on the very same structural notes. They are very, very akin together, and there is a theory that they were singing both Hermosa and Cadavasia from the old literaria, it was notated only once, and then they had the possibility to sing it both slowly and more quickly, but this is a theory. However,
this is just a theory, yeah.
Theory, but why not? Because we had a very high level of musicality. They were born in this tradition. They were listening from a very young age to this kind of music, and maybe only to this kind of music, and not so many musics we are listening today. And so they had another sort of concentration and of familiarity from very early age. And then
so if I well understood, this theory about quicker, shorter exegesis stays only in theory for the moment, because one cannot find any repertory from which to extract any concrete list of theses. Am I right or wrong?
Yes, yes. This is what it seems.
Okay, thank you so much.
As far as I know, but you should ask also maybe some other chapters. So I think the study is in front of us. We are invited, all of us, to dig into deeply and daily into this wonderful tradition. And I think that with God's help, we can find in the future very, very beautiful things, especially when trying to collaborate with each other and helping each other in this main issue.
And if you allow me, Professor Alexandru, there is a second question. You presented during the masterclass in Yash a very interesting point of view regarding the exegesis of the chromatic style, and you showed very clearly that apparently Hourmuzios and Arhivarul preferred to make the exegesis in a diatonic way, even though we have chromatic materials. Can someone tell if there is any criteria when to make the exegesis into chromatic style or into the diatonic style, even though we have chromatic materials?
Yes, it seems very clear that the first parallaki which we wrote, it was diatonic and it was based on the wheel. And in later times, they forged out also a chromatic parallaki, and then this leading up eventually having the scales for each mode separately, and then showing at once at the beginning this chromatic structure. But this piece is all throughout with diatonic parallaki, and it seems that since it represents now a part of the second mode and the plagal of the second mode, it should be in a chromatic way. I think that he chose it because this is representative for most of the repertory of the second and the plagal of the second mode. And I never saw in the stichiraric genre, I mean, for other genera, but in the stichiraric genre, what is written by in the old stichirarium, like second mode or plagal of the second, always as an entire piece goes chromatically at Hourmuzios. But if it's inside diatonic pieces, then it's diatonic. It depends on the context.